tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make beautiful marbleized paper using this Smooch Pearlized accent ink, watercolor paper, which I've die cut into a little dress form die, and water. To prepare your water for marbleizing, it's very important that the container that your water is in be extremely still. So you want to let it sit on your work surface for just a bit, and you want to open up a color of your Pearlized accent ink. In this case, I'm going to start with Pool. And what I'm doing with this is I'm just going to take the applicator and touch it to the surface of the water. And you won't be able to see color on here for just a minute. But what I'm doing is I'm preparing the surface of the water with a lighter color than the one that's going to be my accent color. And something kind of magical happens when you put the first color into the water. It almost dirties the water surface, if you will, and gets it ready to hold the second color of accent ink in a way that is quite dramatic, and you'll see in just a second. The second color that I'm using, and if you want with these little containers, you can give them a little shake if yours is a little bit empty like mine is. And the second color that I'm using is Ocean Soul, which is a darker, deeper teal color. And you'll be able to see this a little more dramatically when I touch it to the water. So now you can see I've created a little spot. And the longer I hold the applicator to the surface of the water, the bigger the spot becomes. And it's really fun to make patterns this way. I'm just going to drop some color around, and now you can sort of see why you really need the surface of the water to be still. Because if you jostle this, you're going to change the pattern that you've laid out. So now I have this pattern, and I'm actually going to use the end of the bottle to swirl it around and make that classic marble pattern that you've seen on beautiful hand marbled paper. And you can see as I just slowly, and the ticket is definitely slowly and deliberately drag the tip of the container through the ink, that it creates a really beautiful pattern. Next, I'm going to take a little dress form that I've die cut using the So Nifty Dynamic from My Favorite Things, and I've cut out a piece of watercolor paper. And all you want to do is lay your paper flat on the surface of the water. And I just drop mine in and then pick it up, and you get this beautiful marbled piece of artwork. Now you can get a little bubble trapped. As you saw, I had a little bubble right there. I think it's just a fun part of the design, but I'll show you a trick to get rid of those if you want. But you can see how beautiful this is. And then you just want to set it aside to dry. While your ink is still in a pretty pattern, and it will get muddy after a while, but you can get a couple good uses out of this. You just want to put the second one down, and if you want, you can tip one end into the water and kind of force the bubbles out as you go towards the other end. And then you have another patterned little dress form. Now, if you want to come in with other colors, you can continue to work with this used water for a little while. I'm going to use a kiwi color, which is a really, really nice green, and you can see it pushing the blue away. And again, I'm just creating spots, different size spots determined by the length of time that I hold the tip to the water. And just insert a little bit of this beautiful lime green. And then I'm going to come back with the Ocean Soul back into the middle. And I can actually just go right in the middle of those pools of color without disturbing the outside edges. And you can see I can get more precise the older the water gets, because the surface already has ink all over it, so I have a little bit more control. And then I'm going to do the same thing, just gently swirl this And now I have a little different color palette that I can use for my dress. And there she is, very dramatic in a kind of blue and green, more lime colored streak in the center. Now, as long as you don't blot the surface while the ink is still drying on the paper, this very fine detail of the marbling will be preserved. It just picks up the ink initially from when you lie it down on the paper, and I just set them on a paper towel to dry, and I don't blot. If you do blot, which you can try, you just get more muted colors and a little more muted detail than you would doing it this way. Now, a couple different ways to clean the water. You can just go dump the water out in the sink, but since we're only working with the surface of the water, you can clean up the surface of the water with a paper towel and absorb the ink that you have on the surface so that you can use another color. Whenever I mop up the water like that and it looks all clean and perfect, I always wish that I could do the same thing with my house, but I can't. Now I'm going to take some Sweet Melon Smooch and I'm going to set it on the surface of my newly cleaned, mopped up water just to get a base color going. And I'm going to show you how you can just create kind of a different background paper if you're not using a die cut accent piece like I was. And I'm going to come in and you can see these dramatic spots of pink, which are so cute. This color is called Sassy Pink, which is perfect. I do love all things sassy. And it looks great with this melon. It gives it kind of a sherbet look on the finished project, which you'll see. It's really adorable. And a lot of times after I put the second darker accent color down, I'll go back with the lighter color, and you can do two things. You can go in between the darker colors to push them away, so in between those two spots of pink, or I can just go right in the center and I can make these little dots, which is very fun. You can get some really kind of wild patterns. It's sort of like all the dresses that they wore on Laugh-In. Not that I'm old enough to have ever seen that show, but that's what these remind me of. And then you don't have to swirl and marble in the classic way if you don't want to. If you find that you have a pattern that you really like, you can just get a piece of cardstock. This is watercolor paper again, just a square. And you can just set it down over the part that you like and pick it up, and you have a very fun background pattern that'll be different every single time you use it. To complete today's project, I used a piece of the Seasonal Pieces printed window sheets from Stampin' Up. I used the My Favorite Things So Nifty Dynamics and Matching stamp set, a little bit of twine, some Smooch Pearlized accent ink in Ocean Soul and Pool, the Dizzy Border die from My Favorite Things, a round hole punch, a corner rounder, a square punch, and a bowl of water. Now to use this lovely marbled element on the card, I'm first going to take a piece of this gorgeous window sheet and I'm going to attach it over my designer paper at the bottom just to give it kind of a soft little feminine look. And I stamped from the So Nifty stamp set this little sentiment that says friendships are sewn one stitch at a time. And I don't know if you've seen this little trick, but if you want to make those perfect pennants without driving yourself crazy, all you have to do is line up the edges of the end of your little tag on one of your square punches. And the size of the punch just depends on how big you want your tag to be. But now you don't have to cut it with scissors and then keep cutting it when it's not perfect. So this is a very handy little trick. And then I'm just going to tie this little tag onto my card before we finish our little marble lady. And I cut myself more than enough twine here just so that I could make life difficult for myself on film. You know, tying a bow under pressure is always, that's what every stamper wants to do, right? So that's that. Now I just need to adjust it and trim off the ends. I always fiddle with these until I like them. So I'll snip the little ends off. And then because my tags always seem to stray, I'm just going to use a Stampin' Dimensional. Oh, and look, I'm so excited that I got black ink on my fingernail. And I'm just going to secure it to the card kind of at the angle that I'd like to see it at. Now this little corner is driving me crazy, so I'm going to stick a glue dot under there and secure that down. Since I cut this adorable little dress form with the Dynamics die, the thin steel die that matches this stamp set, I'm going to take the matching stamp and I'm just going to stamp this kind of pretty frilly image that goes with it over the top of it. Now it helps to hold your breath when you're stamping these, and if you don't get it 100% perfect, don't sweat it. You've just made handmade marble paper, so I think you're allowed a little bit of wiggle room on your stamp. And now I have this beautiful sort of swirly dress image over the top. And I'm going to take some more foam dimensionals and stick them to the back. I think I'll just put 2 here. Since this is such a tiny, delicate little image, I really only need 2. And I'm just going to, if your paper, you do want to make sure your paper is completely dry before you put your adhesive on there. So after you've done your marbling, let them sit for a while. And if the paper has warped a little bit from being wet, you can either heat it with your heat gun from the other side, which will reverse the shape, or I'm usually too impatient for that, so I just kind of wiggle it until it's the shape I like. And then I'll just put the little dress form on the card, and there you have it.
Didn't you let the colors wash all over you? Golden boy, your daddy's name